After the Fukushima mass murder event of March 11, 2011, 3.11, the Rothschilds sent a representative to explain why Fukushima was attacked. He said they plan to move their Asian headquarters from Tokyo, Japan to North Korea. To accomplish this, they intended to move 40 million Japanese from Greater Tokyo to North Korea. They even showed me a map of their planned industrial zone there. Prime Minister Kon Naoto, who was in power at the time of the attack, told a packed press conference at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan that he had been encouraged to evacuate Tokyo in the aftermath of the attack. Not a single corporate media outlet reported this. The other thing that happened was that immediately after 3/11, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Prime Minister Khan and told him that if Japan did not hand over its entire $7 trillion or so in foreign currency, then electromagnetic weapons would be used to cause Mt. Fuji to erupt. However, at this point, something unexpected happened. Hundreds of earthquakes hit the Atlantic island of La Palma immediately after 3/11. There was a very real danger that it would collapse into the ocean and cause a 100-meter tsunami to hit the U.S. eastern and European southern coasts. The earthquakes stopped only after the U.S. military contacted the White Dragon Society and promised that no further attacks would be allowed against Japan. Nonetheless, the Khazarian mafia headquartered in Switzerland succeeded in reimposing a slave prime minister on Japan. Abe Shinzo was put in place via a fraudulent election. Following this, he was invited to be a keynote speaker at the gathering of Western oligarchs in Davos, Switzerland. At Davos, Abe told the international community that China was like Germany before WW1. What he was referring to was a plan by George Bush Sr. to have the G7, Russia, and Japan all gang up and attack China. The plan was to divide China into 5 or 6 separate countries to prevent it from ever again being a threat to Khazarian mafia power. Abe set up an openly fascist government and proceeded to carry out a massive, secret military buildup to participate in Bush's planned invasion of China. A huge amount of military equipment was secretly stockpiled in the Kumamoto region of Japan that is nearest to China. At the same time, Abe set up a biological warfare facility disguised as a veterinary school. However, the planned invasion of China was called off because both Russia and the Pentagon refused to go along. The Pentagon has done war game after war game simulating an attack on China, and the end result is always the same. The war turns nuclear, 90% of humanity dies, and the northern hemisphere of the planet becomes uninhabitable. In 2016, a series of mysterious earthquakes, each centered exactly on a Japanese military base, destroyed this equipment. The earthquake seismographs all indicated they were artificial earthquakes. Abe was also secretly poisoned and told that if he did not go along with China he would not be able to receive the antidote, Asian secret society sources say. At the same time, the White Dragon Society reached out to the global warming faction of the Western elite. If you recall, the year 2000 U.S. presidential election was a contest between the global warming faction under Al Gore and the Nazi Fourth Reich faction under George Bush Sr. The global warming faction, centered around Queen Elizabeth, believed that the environment could be saved by putting a tax on carbon and using the money to pay third world countries to preserve their forests. The Nazi faction wanted to kill 90% of the global population. This writer has a tape recording of an invitation to join this faction. They said that in order to preserve the environment it was necessary to eliminate the useless eaters. These were people like subsistence farmers who could feed their families but did not work at factories making things. They said that war did not kill enough people so that they would use starvation and disease to accomplish this goal. This is why the Bush Jr. administration set up biological weapons factories all over the world. They released SARS, bird flu, Ebola, MERS, etc. in their attempt to kill people off. At the same time, they subsidized farmers in developed countries to use their grains to produce biofuel, instead of food. However, the plans failed because none of their bioweapons were able to kill the intended billions of people. The attempt to starve people to death was also stopped after insiders blew the whistle and explained that biofuel subsidies were causing starvation crises in 33 countries. This put an end to those subsidies. A letter was sent via diplomatic pouch from the UK Embassy in Tokyo to Queen Elizabeth asking for her blessing for a campaign similar in scale to World War III, but this time the enemy would be poverty, environmental destruction and everything else that plagues this beautiful but fragile planet we all share. Following this, a series of countries, England, Germany, France, Canada, Switzerland, Italy, etc., decided to join the China Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The multi-trillion-dollar Chinese Belt and Road Initiative followed this. The money was spent building highways, ports, schools, railways, hospitals, bridges, and other such infrastructure around the world. Japan and the United States were the only major countries that held back from this initiative. They called it a Chinese debt trap. However, it clearly put the Bush Nazi faction on the defensive. The other thing that happened in 2016 was that the Gnostic Illuminati decided to form a temporary alliance with the British Commonwealth to prevent Hillary Clinton, Rockefeller, from becoming President of the United States. A meeting was held in Antarctica on the November 8, 2016 election day that was attended by Skull and Bones John Kerry and many other members of the secret Western elite. We have interviewed two people who were present at that meeting. They say a decision was made to flip the election so that designated loser Donald Trump would be elected president with the very votes intended for Clinton. This was accomplished after a firefight between special forces at the underground base near Denver Airport took over the election, stealing computers on behalf of the Trump forces. It is interesting to note how in the 2016 election things seemed to be going Clinton's way and then they suddenly flipped and went Trump's way. The opposite happened when the Nazi forces regrouped around Rockefeller proxy Joe Biden in 2020 and flipped a real Trump victory into a fraudulent Biden victory. We will get back to that later. In any case, Trump became president of a bankrupt nation and there really was very little he could do about it. The $23 trillion raised for Barack Obama was running out. Trump tried many things, including tariffs, to try to turn the situation around. Remember, he also said things like China would buy $200 billion worth of goods every year. He also tried unsuccessfully to take over the world's largest oil reserves in Venezuela and offered to buy Greenland. However, a nation with a GDP of about $20 trillion and over $200 trillion in debt and unfunded liabilities really has no choice but to go bankrupt. The U.S. corporate government has external payment deadlines every September 30 and January 31. In September of 2019, the U.S. was able to avoid bankruptcy only by stealing Japan's national pension fund. In January of 2020, they failed to make their payments. They were given a 2-week grace period lasting until February 16, 2020 but were unable to make their payments. That is when all hell broke loose, as we all know. The owners of the U.S. corporation lashed out with a massive 5G electromagnetic attack on Wuhan, China. Remember, mass deaths began in Wuhan only after 10,000 5G transmission towers were activated, subjecting the population to deadly low-level electromagnetic attacks. The official story that it was a coronavirus is provable nonsense. That is because if it was a biological attack, then the pandemic should have spread first to the suburbs of Wuhan and then to other parts of China. Instead, it was restricted exactly to the 5G zones inside Wuhan proper. After this, the spread of COVID-19 around the world coincided exactly with maps of where 5G networks had been activated. To understand 5G, think of the defrost mode of your microwave. That operates at around 200 watts, while 5G is equivalent to about 30 watts. However, if it is transmitted 24 hours a day, it starts producing symptoms that resemble lung disease. Japan warned the world about this danger after they subjected 5,000 passengers aboard the cruise ship Diamond Princess to 5G and started getting multiple deaths. After this, all 5G was stopped worldwide, so the Khazarian mafia was forced to resort to Plan B. They went ahead with medical martial law and started renaming influenza, the common cold, pneumonia and tuberculosis, and all sorts of other deaths as being from COVID-19. At the same time, they used their access to fiat money printing presses to pay huge sums of money to doctors to diagnose COVID-19. Since Western doctors operate under a military regime, they were told to go along with the pandemic story or lose their licenses. The Khazarian mafia also used their corporate media to spread pandemic fear porn 24/7. Also, since the KM failed to kill their planned billions of people with 5G radiation, and since all their bio-weapons had proved ineffective, they next resorted to vaccines. What has now happened is that the secret government of the West has been exposed by this campaign. The world's military, police, and intelligence agencies began a counterattack. Next week we will report on the status of that counterattack and also on plans for running the planet after the Khazarian mafia have been ousted from power.